today's subject, which is how to keep your gut healthy over the holidays.
Very much so. Very much so.
Big topic.
This is always a big deal. This time of year, we start getting a lot of complaints about, oh, geez, my stomach, this, that. I mean, the list of symptoms go on and on. It really does. So.
And your gut is, it's a bit more than your stomach or your belly. Like as a kid, where you're like, this is my gut. The gut. Tell us exactly what the gut is.
Well, the gut's the entire gastrointestinal tract. In other words, you're from the opening up here to the opening down there. Wow. So that whole thing is the digestive tract. And there's a lot of stuff goes on there, more so than people realize, really. I mean, when I was in school, granted, it was a long time ago, rocks were still cooling off and all that. But back then, we were told that, neurochemistry even, your brain chemistry, the things that keeps our brain functioning correctly and so on. Some of the neurotransmitters, they were neurotransmitters, so they're made in the brain. And a small amount of it is. But now we know the science is kind of telling us, wow, about 80% or more of those neurotransmitters made in the gut. So that makes the gut extraordinarily important, even for your brain function. So, and of course, we have to digest and process all the food that we take in, which can be a real big problem this time of year, especially. So it's very important. Very important.
I learned myself after we had a baby,
right,
that the development of the biome there in the gut starts very early, and it's like even with breastfeeding that is impacting how the gut opens and closes and is developing. So there's work going on before you even know there's work going on.
Yeah, actually the gut the health of the gut starts with a vaginal delivery. Now, if you have a cesarean section, those people always, for some reason, they're going to have, because they weren't, quote unquote, inoculated. So they didn't get the initial setup of the bacteria from mom, and that sets things in motion. So if we don't do that, then the gut's kind of, you're out there, and like I say, if they don't breastfeed, you got people that are going to develop a lot of GI problems or gastrointestinal problems even through into adult life. I talked to a lot of people that, I was a cesarean baby, blah, blah, blah. And sure enough, mom didn't breastfeed, so they've had digestive stuff pretty much most of their life, some sort. Mild, they think, it's just no big deal, but it can be.
So if you're beginning to, I guess, what are some of the signs, I guess, or some symptoms that you might have an imbalance that you need to start looking into?
Well, one of the big things, and we get a lot of complaints, I guess is the word, about their GI tract is and most people that walk in, it's kind of amazing. They're on some sort of PPI, something to keep down the acid because they've had GERD or they've had reflux or they have all these kind of issues, or some other issues. They can have the problem with diarrhea. They can have a problem with constipation. They have all sorts of upsets, and it all kind of starts with that gut. And like I say, this time of year and the amount of food that we're exposed to, makes it kind of tough.
Yeah, well, and in the South, we eat so many foods that are good for us,
and
especially this time of year,
and some of them that are not so good for us. But you're right, Chad. You're right.
Yeah, that's that becomes a problem. We talk a lot about processed, prepackaged food, and it becomes so much easier. But those things, you hear it so much about it. Those things work against you. They're, you're eating because you're hungry and you need to, you need the nourishment. But those things are providing just like instant relief from your hunger pains, but they're causing many, many, many other issues that could have a domino effect, especially with your gut.
Yeah, especially. A lot of especially the packaged processed food. Now, this time of year, hopefully. People are doing a little bit more home cooking, okay, hopefully, preferably, let's put it that way. So they're doing that home cooking, so it's probably not going to be quite as bad, but that packaged processed food, it causes all kind of problems, because some of the chemicals in there, MSG being one of the biggies. Now, MSG, monosodium glutamate, it's a stimulant, kind of messes up the brain as well as the gut. And like I say, I think we've talked about it before on another show. There's a really neat book that we always go back and refer to. The doc up at Jackson wrote it many years ago, and it's about excitotoxins, the taste that kills. And he talks about MSG. He talks about some of the other, like the artificial sweeteners and so on, which can cause some real imbalances in that microbiome in the gut, and they can cause some real upsets as far as the brain health, everything else. So really, really kind of, now's the time to pay attention to it.
Right, and we're talking about kind of flavor enhancers.
A lot of your flavor enhancers, a lot of the sauces and so on that you go out, especially even if you go out and eat. A lot of the restaurants don't make their sauces from scratch, so to speak. So they're going to use a prepackaged, processed sauce. Not going to be good for you. Yeah.
Well, just make it from scratch. That's easy enough, right?
That's easy enough.
Sauces are not difficult.
They really aren't.
I mean, even if you're going to start with a roux, that's a good southern.
That's a lot of stirring. Okay, but other than that, it's really not that difficult to do. And we do a lot of things like ourselves, like for instance, salad dressings. We'll make it ourselves. And that's the key is you know what's in it. You know that there's no monosodium glutamate. You know there's no saccharin or anything like that in there. And it's much better for you. And it really tastes a lot better.
Right. And I'm good with some oil and vinegar myself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where you start. I mean,
right.
With most things, right? Oil and vinegar. Let's put a little of this, a little of that in there, So we do all kinds of really, mix, like yesterday we had a Greek salad. Okay, Janine just put together some oil, starts with that oil. I think she uses white vinegar or something like that. I don't know, anyhow, white wine vinegar, I believe. And then she just makes it from there and puts all the various herbs and stuff, a lot of which I grow in the garden. And man, I mean, it tastes great. It really does.
And it's fresh.
Fresh. Yeah.
That's the best part.
Oh yeah. And it really does.
And you know what's in it. So you know that you're not saying one thing on television and doing another at home.
No. No. Oh no. People are kind of amazed sometimes if they come to our house and we're eating something and they say, "Oh my God, you make your own salad dressing? Oh my God, you do this, you do that?" Yeah. I mean, if you don't, you're kind of at the hands of, what we got.
And it tastes better.
What most of us don't realize is, for instance, if you're going out and eating conventionally grown beef and chickens and everything else, there's antibiotics there. And what they do, and some of the other chemicals that are in your packaged processed food, actually starts destroying that stuff. And so if you destroy the microbiome in your gut, man, there goes your health. I mean, because they say all health starts in the gut, and well, it really does. Even heart health. So, it's a big thing. If you start destroying it, bingo. So you always want, I think probiotics are probably one of the best things that anybody can do, just in general. Get those probiotics because so many things are working against us. And you just want to take that one step real early, take you a good probiotic, and based on what you need, and you can tell that from symptoms and so on, step one.
Well, if you're in the store, you're looking for a probiotic, there's no shortage of options.
No shortage.
So where do you start? Like I know that if you're going to go to one of those, if it's the weekend and you're feeling bad, and you want to go to one of those big box stores, there's going to be tons of options. Where is a good jumping off point with probiotics?
You have to know basically what your chief symptoms are. For instance, we have people that are prone to diarrhea. That's one set of probiotics. If you have that person that's prone to constipation, that's a whole other set of probiotics. Now, there's different ones. There's something like 10,000 or more strains of the little guys that we're studying now, and thousands of them have been named and labeled, and we know what they do, how they process the things, what they do in the gut, how they help the gut health, how they maintain, integrity there and so on. So it just depends on what, and you really, honestly, if you go to somewhere like a big box store, you're going to have a little bit of a difficulty because you're on your own. Come into our store, we're going to start asking you those questions. Okay, what's your chief problems? How does your digestive system work? And then we pick out something to fit and correct the issues that you may have. That's the key.
Because it's definitely not one size fits all.
Oh, no. Unfortunately.
And here's the thing, it's the holidays,
yeah.
And we all know, it's difficult to get into a space like Doctor's Nutrition, because at the holidays people take time off, everybody kind of scatters, and then you're left to what's available, which is going to be an immediate, urgent kind of situation, urgent care, and those get expensive if they're even covered at all, and you might not get exactly what you need. So staying ahead of the curve is probably the key.
It really is, especially this time of year. I mean, we suggest, of course, probiotics, number one. The other thing that we highly recommend for most people, especially if you're over, say, 40 years old or so, and even some a lot younger, is digestive enzymes. Because a lot of this food that we take in, especially the packaged processed stuff, extraordinarily hard to digest. So, a good enzyme package is extremely good. And we've got, again, there are a whole bunch of different ones there. So it's not one size fits all again. And because that can cause things, we have people come in this time of year or in the holiday season, and they've just had a flare-up of pancreatitis. That's what they got diagnosed with. Oh, and it's not fun. So, we've got the digestive enzymes and so on to help that digest and break down that food. You're going to get more nutrients out of it, and that gut's going to be a lot happier too. It really is.
We keep talking about this time of the year and the holidays. So what are the kinds of problems people tend to have specifically during the holidays?
Overindulging. I mean, seriously.
No way.
No, yeah, really. I've had a gentleman, I think it was a week or so ago, and he said something about, he said, well, I guess I just need to use some common sense. I said, yeah, that would be a good start. And he said, moderation. I said, let me stop you right there. Most people don't know what moderation is. I mean, I have seen people literally at this time of year, and you go to, say, grandma's house, and everybody's brought dish and so on, and a lot of different, say, for instance, desserts, okay? Moderation. Well, I'll have one of those, and just one of those. I won't have two of each, I'll just have one. You've overdone it right there. I mean, if you have more than, pick out one you like best. Have that one, maybe, because that's moderation. Moderation is not, going back for seconds for the desserts and things like that. That's always a biggie.
Listen, I fall victim to that.
Oh, yes.
My mother's house, grandmother.
Oh, yeah.
It's like I won't have a whole slice of pie.
Just a little bit.
I'll just have a sliver, but I can't have chocolate without having pecan.
Right.
And then there's chocolate delight over here, and then there's banana pudding.
Right.
It's like I don't. You know what? I'll have a piece of this right now, and then 20 minutes later I'll have a scoop of that. That's the hard part.
It is, especially this time of year, and when people tend to, the biggest problem that most of them that we see is overindulgence. Even with the good foods, maybe it's the green bean salad or something like that. They just kind of overdo it, yeah, and because you're taking in a lot more food than you normally eat. Gut has to handle it, and you're overwhelming it.
Well, I can't say that I can speak against that. It's because that's the problem. So what kind of changes do people need to make to keep from all of this kind of spiraling out of control? Some we're not saying only get small pieces. What are some good first steps people can make, some changes they can make now to start?
Well, the big thing is to avoid sugar. All right, now we know that. I mean, because we've talked about that, ad infinitum in the past, and we always do, and I'll probably always will, because it is such a big part of the problem. So we want to avoid sugar. So look at stuff and say, like, okay, I've got to avoid, if I'm going to have that dessert, make that the very last thing in a very small amount. What you want to do is kind of focus on your proteins, because that's just what we should be doing anyhow all the time, is focus on getting the correct proteins, because our body has to have protein. So especially as we age, unfortunately, but we have to have the protein. So start with that, then look at some vegetable dishes and so on, and probably some that aren't as overwhelmingly spiced up as maybe, maybe they're good, but if they are something a lot more than you normally or typically eat, do a very small amount of it. Don't do, big pile of it, And, if you've got a food sensitivity, and we got a lot of people that do that, food sensitivities, food allergies, and so on. If you have, pay real close attention this time of year, because people, especially if it's a dish that you didn't make or didn't have anything to do with, you're not sure, ask, is there any egg in there? If you got an egg allergy, for instance, is there any egg in that? And they'll typically, whoever the cook is, they'll tell you.
because this is the time of year we start putting a lot. Again, it's a lot of things. Green bean casserole isn't just green beans.
No, it's
there's a lot of additional pieces to that. There's a sweet potato casserole. Is not just sweet potatoes.
Right.
It is delicious, but it is some extra things in there that you might not normally have in your diet every single day.
That's true, and that's what's going to get you, is that stuff that you just don't have every day, and because your tummy may be doing just fine on its own, with you kind of paying attention to stuff, and then here comes this time of year, well, you can't turn down that green bean salad or whatever else, and boom, we start having problems.
What if you didn't behave? Right? What if you overindulge? What if you ate all the things you've never eaten before and you have an upset stomach? What do you do?
Well, the first thing that we always suggest is again, back to the probiotic thing. You should be on that, especially this time of year. Just know that, okay, that's going to be a big step right there, is getting the correct probiotic for whatever you got going on. The next thing is going to be your digestive enzymes. Something to digest what you have just consumed. That's the biggie. We have several varieties of enzymes that we use, and it just depends on what the patient has. For instance, what they've got going on, what symptoms they're exhibiting, and so on. But that's where you start. Get those digestive enzymes, get those probiotics in there. That's where you start. And then if you have a really bad problem, something that we use a lot is what we call GI essentials, and it's a mix, it's powder that you just mix up in a little water, drink it in between meals. What it does is it coats the GI tract from the mouth right on down through the esophagus, because a lot of the esophagus is where it's going to catch a lot of the problems, into the top of the GI tract, stomach and small intestines and so on. And that's a real biggie because it curbs the inflammation, kind of settles that down. It helps the healing process, got things in it like aloe, slippery elm, which you've probably never heard of before, but some stuff that's known to actually help the gut in its quest to get healthy. That's the key. So it's something, and I have people that say, oh, that stuff's like a miracle, because it really will settle down that burning, all those things. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we have a couple of questions here. So what are the effects of losing a gallbladder?
Well, you're not going to deal with fats very effectively from there on out. You're going to notice that if you eat a high-fat meal, better know where the little boys or girls are in pretty quickly. I get that complaint a lot, okay? So they're like, ooh, that stuff's rough on you. Yeah, it can be. It really can be. So that's one of the biggies. And just know that if you've lost a gallbladder, for whatever reason, you probably should take those digestive enzymes, because you're not going to process those fats accordingly. And a lot of those fats are stuff that we need, Chet. We need that stuff. It's really good for us, brain, heart, health, everything else. But if we can't process them correctly, so it's back to the digestive enzymes.
Yeah, I don't have a gallbladder myself, and the very beginning of that is a whole different experience.
Oh, tough.
Your body is a pretty interesting species, a specimen. It learns how to cope without it. Yeah. It figures it out. It gets along, but
to a point.
It takes a second for it to catch up.
Right, it sure does.
What are some natural tips or foods for people suffering with ADHD and anxiety?
Well, if it's ADHD and anxiety, and possibly they two do to go together, number one thing, and I know you probably get tired of me harping on this, avoid sugar at all costs. Sugar is highly inflammatory. It's a neuroinflammation problem. Notice brain, nervous system. It inflames that brain. If you got that brain on fire, the rest of you's on fire. The whole activity, the anxiety, the depression, all that stuff. So number one thing, avoid sugar at all costs. And start looking for things, like eating, for instance, the fatty fish. Now, a lot of people, salmon, for instance, some of the other cod, some of the other big, heavy, fatty fish, sardines, great food, because the omega-3. Omega-3 fats are great, because the omega-3 fats actually, especially DHA, calm that neural inflammation, so we can calm that brain down. Huge, huge part of it.
Sardines? Doc,
I know.
You just got to look at a whole fish.
Well, you can get them that are filleted and don't have the heads on them and all that.
I just can't.
Can't do it, huh?
Oh my goodness. They're great. I'd rather just take a supplement. Speaking of supplements, what are the best supplements to take when in vitro for Crohn's disease? That doesn't say in vitro. That says Entyvio. Is that Entyvio?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure on that one. But anyhow, if you got Crohn's,
Right.
Back to that GI essentials. We have a lot of people that have the GI, they have the Crohn's problem, and staying away from things like that are inflammatory to the gut. Sugar. Back to sugar. Okay. Gluten and wheat. Got to really pay attention to that one, because that is an inflammatory process going on in the gut. It's going to cause you problems. So that, and eat the foods that are naturally anti-inflammatory. Back to the fats, and take something like the omega-3s, those kind of things to kind of get that inflammation down. And there's a lot of other things you can do for it, but very specifically, the GI essentials, I've got a lot of folks that keep that on hand. Once they get everything under control with like the Crohn's, they're going to keep it in the medicine chest, so to speak, and they're going to have it there. So if they start feeling like, oh, okay, this thing's getting a little bit out of hand, we're going to jump on it real quick, take a dose of that, go to bed. Most likely by tomorrow, it'll be calmed down again. So, I'm Dr. Fox, and I want to thank you for watching this YouTube video. Be sure and hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell, so you'll be notified on any upcoming videos that we have coming up. And thank you again for watching our YouTube videos.